Saigon. A rainy night in July 2020. The downpour hasn't stopped for hours. Wind howls through the cracks of an old apartment building in District 7. Beneath flickering neon lights, the place stands like a shadowy tumor, silent and forgotten, in the middle of a bustling city. The walls are stained and moldy, streaked with time. Cracks snake across the hallway floor, and every footstep echoes like it came from beyond the grave. Apartment 512 sits on the 5th floor. People say, there's something wrong with it. Once it was home to Fong and Lin, a couple who loved, lived, and then destroyed each other. Outsiders saw it as a simple family home. But behind those thin walls, something rotten grew. The slow decay of trust, the erosion of humanity, and the hunger of a spirit that never found peace. This story isn't just about a ghost. It's a reflection of greed, of prejudice, of the price we pay when our hearts turn cold and stone-like. Will you dare to enter? Then listen closely. Fong, 35, an office worker by day, respectful, polite, the kind of son any mother would boast about. But at home, he ruled like a tyrant. He was the pride of his mother, Mrs. Lon, the stern owner of the little convenience store downstairs. Fong had married Lin, a gentle girl from Dong Nai. At first, everything seemed peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then Lin became pregnant, and everything changed. Fong grew obsessed, monitoring every bite of food she took, every hour she slept. But above all, he fixated on one thing, the baby's gender. It must be a boy, he said coldly, like a commandment from some ancient god. Lin, trembling, nodded in silence. The day of the ultrasound, the doctor glanced at Lin, then whispered, "It looks like a baby boy." Fong's face lit up with joy. He wrapped his arms around Lin, brought her home, spoiled her with bird's nest porridge, rare fruits, treated her like a queen bearing the heir to a throne. But no one knew. It was all just a mask. His obsession with a male heir would soon become the fire that burned everything to ash. That night, a violent storm raged outside. Lin was in labor for 8 agonizing hours, screaming through the pain inside the delivery room. Outside, Mrs. Lon paced the hallway, restless. Fong sat stiffly on a plastic chair, face stone cold. His only question, did the doctor say it's a boy yet? Then came the first cry, a thin, fragile wail, barely louder than the wind. A nurse stepped out, gently cradling a small newborn wrapped in a white blanket. Lin lay still, tears and sweat clinging to her face, staring at the baby she had fought to bring into the world. Pink skin, tiny fingers, eyes fluttering open to a world of thunder and shadow. "It's a girl," the nurse said softly. Silence. Fong froze, his face twisted, hope turned to disappointment, then to rage. Without a word, he turned his back and walked away. He left Lin lying there, her eyes blurred with tears, heart shattered. The baby girl was named Nok. But from the moment she entered this world, she was no longer a blessing, just a mistake in her father's eyes. And Lin, broken in body and spirit, couldn't even find the strength to hold her daughter again. Fong never visited his wife at the hospital. He claimed to be busy with work, but the truth was crueler. He simply abandoned Lin during her most vulnerable days. When Lin finally returned home with baby Nok in her arms, Fong barely glanced at the child before turning away. "What can a girl even do?" he muttered, disgust dripping from every word. Lin, always delicate and soft-spoken, began to wither. His indifference cut her deeper than any wound. She changed, withdrawn, heavy with sadness, then slowly filled with silent rage. She cared for her daughter out of duty, not love. Whenever baby Nok cried, Lin snapped, "Shut up. Why are you always crying?" At dinner, Fong ate in silence. No words exchanged, no warmth. Nok sobbed quietly in her crib. Lin didn't even turn her head. The apartment grew heavy with a silent smoke, not from fire, but from the slow burn of apathy. And from that moment on, Nok grew up wrapped not in blankets, but in a coldness born from the very people who gave her life. While Fong looked down on his daughter, Mrs. Lon, his mother, loved Nak in a strange, fierce way. From the very first day, she held the baby close, her frail arms trembling, but her heart full of warmth. "Your grandma's little treasure," she whispered, rocking Nak to sleep. On nights when Lin ignored the baby's cries, Mrs. Lon would quietly sneak in, cover her up, hum lullabies. She spent her savings on the best formula milk, hiding it from Fong like a secret. Whenever Fong lashed out or Lin showed no care, Mrs. Lon would rise, voice trembling with rage. "You monsters! She's just a child." Her eyes burned, not with age, but with fury. She couldn't undo the poison of her son's twisted beliefs, but she could stand between Nak and the dark. She knew her days were numbered, but as long as she was alive, Nak still had someone to cling to, even if just a thread of warmth in a growing storm. 3 years later, Lin gave birth to their second child, this time a boy. It was as if a curse had been lifted. Fong and Lin finally smiled again. They named him Dewey, the one to carry on the family name. Fong proudly paraded him around the apartment complex. Lin glowed with joy, doting on every breath the boy took. At dinner, she piled meat and fish on Dewey's plate, leaving Nak with plain rice and tasteless soup. When Dewey took his first steps, his first words, the house filled with laughter. And Nak? She shrank deeper into silence, watching toys she was never allowed to touch. One day, Dewey spilled a glass of water. Lin turned sharply and screamed, "Nak, what did you break now?" Nak sat quietly in the corner, her notebook open. She hadn't moved, but the slap still came hard and fast. Dewey was their everything, and Nak, just a fading shadow, unwanted, unseen, a useless girl in a house that had no place for her. Dewey was raised in a golden cage, spoiled beyond reason. By the 4th grade, Fong had already bought him a 10 million VND smartphone. "Can't let him lose face with his friends," he said. Dewey spent hours online, gaming, lying, manipulating. He learned how to twist truth into weapons. He often skipped school to hang out at internet cafes. When his teacher scolded him, Dewey cried, "Sister Nak told on me. That was enough." Lin didn't ask questions. The moment Nak's name came up, her hand had already grabbed the whip. One day, Fong noticed 500,000 dong missing from his drawer. Without blinking, Dewey pointed. "She took it. I saw her open it." "Nak, you stole again?" Lin screamed, yanking her by the hair. Before Nak could speak, the blows rained down. She didn't cry, just clenched her shirt, jaw tight, blood dripping from her split lip. As Dewey munched on fried chicken, Nak cleaned the bloody floor with an old rag, her tears blending into the mess. In apartment 512, injustice wasn't an event, it was the air they breathed. One afternoon, the school called Lin. Dewey hadn't done his homework again. At home, Dewey lashed out. "Sister told the teacher I was lazy." Without checking a thing, Lin stormed into the room, grabbed Nak by the hair, and slammed her head into the corner of the table. Thud, cold, hollow sound. Blood gushed from her forehead, painting the floor in crimson. Meanwhile, Fong laughed in a bar across town, his arm around a provocatively dressed woman, Tao, his new mistress. "Girls are useless, just a waste of rice," he chuckled. Mrs. Lon walked past the bar. She heard every word. Her cane struck the table like thunder. "You're filth, a monster. You'll pay for that rotten mind of yours." Her voice cracked the noise like a blade. Fong froze. He didn't argue, but after that night, Mrs. Lon grew weaker. She knew her time was running out. And Nak, she quietly dabbed her bleeding head with a tattered cloth, her eyes no longer shining, just hollow, numb, resigned. It was a bitter, rainy night. Nak had just returned from school. When she found Grandma Lon curled on the sofa, lips purple, body trembling, panic surged. Nak ran to call her parents, but no one came. Lin was asleep. Dewey, headphones on, lost in his game. No one answered, so Knock ran out into the rain, screaming through the night. "Help! Please help my grandma!" The ambulance came, but too late. Grandma Lon passed away that night, still clutching the cloth she used to swaddle Knock as a baby. The funeral was quiet. No tears, except for Knock's. Fong smoked, blank-faced. Lin sighed. She was old. Everyone dies eventually. After that, apartment 512 became colder than ever. There was no one left to defend her. Every slap, every insult, Knock endured it alone, a ghost in her own home. But her eyes were changing. No longer soft, no longer innocent. They turned quiet, deep, like the abyss, the place where love had been buried. Dewey grew worse with age. By 13, he secretly spent 15 million VND on online games, buying gun skins, characters, recharging all night without anyone noticing. When Fong discovered the missing cash from the safe, the house exploded in chaos. "You took it, didn't you?" he shouted at Dewey. The boy stammered, "And no, it wasn't me. Maybe Knock." Knock stood frozen, but before she could speak, smack, Fong's hand struck her face, knocking her into the cabinet edge. Blood spilled from her lip. "You've got some nerve. 15 million. Get out of my house." No one defended her. Lin said nothing. Dewey looked away. Fong flung open the door, dragged Knock into the pouring rain, and shoved her outside. She stood shivering in the hallway, 15 years old, soaking wet. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She turned her back and vanished into the darkness. That night, Knock slept beneath a market roof, clutching her torn school bag, her eyes stripped of innocence. The eyes of someone the world had thrown away. Weeks later, Fong discovered more money missing from the safe. "Dewey, you took it again, didn't you?" Dewey shouted back. "No, it wasn't me this time. I don't believe you." Fong lunged forward. Dewey panicked and shoved his father hard. Fong slipped, his head smashing against the marble table. Thud, a sickening sound, like life snapping in half. Lin screamed, clutching his bloody body. Red spread across the floor like spilled paint. Fong survived, but after surgery, doctors delivered the verdict. Severe brain trauma. He was now half paralyzed and suffering from temporary memory loss. From then on, Fong lay motionless in bed, drooling, mumbling like a child. Lin, exhausted, cared for him with growing indifference. And Dewey, he didn't care. He kept gaming, laughing like nothing had happened. The apartment was now filled with one sound, the soft, pitiful groans of a father, betrayed by the son he once loved most. Headphone sound FX. Heated shouting, skull hitting table, blood dripping, heart monitor beeping, beep, beep. Film frames scene 12, Lin murders her husband. 200 words, psychological horror. Lin was drained. Fong had become a breathing corpse, unresponsive, blank-eyed, drooling on himself. Everything fell on Lin, bathing him, feeding him, enduring his moans. Dewey did nothing, and Knock, the daughter Lin once threw away, was forced to return and serve her broken father. But Knock said nothing. She simply obeyed, her eyes empty, detached. One sleepless night, Lin sat beside Fong's bed, watching his lifeless form. A thought crept in, cold and quiet. If he dies, I'll be free. She grabbed a pillow and slowly pressed it against his face. Her hands trembled, breath shallow. Fong struggled weakly. She stuffed a towel into his mouth, muffling his final cries. 1 minute, 2, then silence. Lin pulled the pillow away, adjusted the blanket, and whispered, "It's done." Outside, wind whistled through the broken window. The curtain swayed slightly, as if something had awakened. Lin was drained. Fong had become a breathing corpse, unresponsive, blank-eyed, drooling on himself. Everything fell on Lin. bathing him, feeding him, enduring his moans. Dewey did nothing. And Nak, the daughter Lin once threw away, was forced to return and serve her broken father. But Nak said nothing. She simply obeyed, her eyes empty, detached. One sleepless night, Lin sat beside Fong's bed, watching his lifeless form. A thought crept in, cold and quiet. If he dies, I'll be free. She grabbed a pillow and slowly pressed it against his face. Her hands trembled, breath shallow. Fong struggled weakly. She stuffed a towel into his mouth, muffling his final cries. 1 minute, 2, then silence. Lin pulled the pillow away, adjusted the blanket, and whispered, "It's done." Outside, wind whistled through the broken window. The curtain swayed slightly, as if something had awakened. Since the night Fong died, Lin began hearing whispers in the apartment. At first, it was mumbling in the middle of the night, then raspy breathing from the bathroom. One evening, while looking in the bedroom mirror, Lin froze. In the reflection, Fong was standing behind her, face pale and gray, eyes blood red, mouth chewing on rotten rice, wet chewing sounds echoing with hatred. "So hungry," the voice echoed in her mind like it came from the other side. She smashed the mirror, but Fong was still there, smirking, blood spilling from his mouth. The next day, while working in the shop, Nam's wife, a woman Lin once had an affair with her husband, came running in. A bottle of acid flew through the air. "You whore!" the woman screamed. The acid sizzled as it hit Lin's face. Smoke, the stench of burning flesh. Lin writhed on the floor, screaming in agony. That night, Fong's voice whispered in her ear, "Jump, the pain will end." She laughed hysterically, walked to the 5th floor balcony, and stepped over the rail. Thud, blood bloomed red across the courtyard. After Lin's death, Dewey spiraled, but instead of changing, he buried himself deeper in games. He dropped out of school, living off the money left in the safe. One night, desperate to play, he returned to apartment 512. Nak wasn't home. The kitchen was dark, cold, but the rice cooker was cracked open. The stench of rotten rice filled the air. Dewey stepped closer. In the dim light, he saw Fong, his father, sitting at the table. His hands scooped moldy rice into his mouth. His eyes bulged. "You left me to starve," the ghost hissed, blood spilling from his mouth and soaking the rice. Dewey screamed, ran out of the apartment. The staircase stretched endlessly. Wind howled like someone chasing him. He burst onto the street, screaming and crying. Screech! A bus slammed the brakes. Thud! Dewey's body hit the pavement, lifeless, twisted. Bystanders gasped. He's completely shattered. In the end, only Nak remained. She lived quietly, helping out at a food stall owned by Mrs. Han, the woman who had once taken her in from the rain. When Lin lay dying in the hospital, Nak came. She wiped her mother's face, fed her spoonfuls of porridge. Despite the years of pain, she whispered, "I'm not angry, Mom." Before passing, Lin handed her a key to the safe. Inside, the deed to apartment 512, their only remaining asset. "Your father left it for you." Lin's final breath escaped. Nak broke down, not for the apartment, but because for the first time, she was acknowledged, part of the family. Months later, Nak returned to school. She sat quietly by the window, where soft sunlight filtered through the leaves. A beam of light warmed her cheek. Gentle, real. Then the final voiceover. "What do you think? Was Fong's ghost truly hungry? Or was it the hunger of greed and guilt that devoured this family from the inside out?"